Good morning, Athens Church. I'm so excited to be with you all. I hope your summer is going well so far. If I had the pleasure of meeting you or not, my name is Trevour Wiltshire. I, along with a group of amazing people, get to lead your middle schoolers into a growing relationship with Jesus. Now, if you've seen me before, which last time I was here, every time I seem to come up on the stage, I have a life update. Some people are laughing because they know every time I come up, like I'm having a child. But I don't know how it keeps lining up like that. I swear it's not on purpose. But well, one, do have a life update. We're moving into our home in a couple of days, which we're super excited about. Shout out to Mike and Jill. But last time I was here, my wife was due in a couple of weeks. And so I want to introduce you guys to my youngest one of my entire family. If we could throw up that picture real quick. Those are my kiddos. To your far right, that's Nora, Shiloh, my boy Maxwell, and that is the newest little addition, my little Gerber baby, Aaliyah. She has like a square face and it's so perfect, it's so cute. That is my basketball team. My wife was like, we're creating a basketball team, what are you trying to do? I call them my Georgia Globetrotters. But we're kicking off a new series called Family Feature, where we're using popular movies, popular film to highlight life-changing principles for wherever you are in life, spiritually or where you are and just in your life. And so we're using Up today, and as you just saw in the film, Up is about this man named Carl Fredricksen. Now, Carl Fredricksen, what you saw was the grumpy side of him, but he didn't always start that way. Carl was a kid who grew up and he was a little timid, he was a little shy, he was kind of kind, and he was just flowing with life. And then he ended up meeting the love of his life. And they went on these different adventures and they would do all these fun things and they would create a bucket list. They get married, they build their home, they make the home they wanted to be in. And they had this one thing on their bucket list to go to this place called Paradise Falls. And then the worst happens, his wife ends up passing away. But what also goes away with Carl was his joy. What leaves with him was his happiness. So then we catch this grumpy side of Carl, and then all of a sudden you see this kid named Russell, who is a junior wilderness scout or something like that, and he shows up at his door and he wants to help him cross the street. He's like, hey, you're an old guy, I can help you cross the street. And so he's just knocking on the door, and eventually Carl sets up this plan where he's like, you know, I don't even want to be here anymore. I'm gonna go take everything I love, everything I've made memories with my wife, and I'm gonna let out 10,000 balloons and float away to this place called Paradise Falls. Now, we see what he wasn't expecting was for Russell to join him. And we see him out just holding on for dear life, like, oh God, please, like let me in. And Carl's like taking his time letting him in. But in that moment, we see Carl do things throughout the movie where he would send down anger, he would send down these different things, he would send down different negative emotions, and Russell would just catch it and throw it back up in a different way. He'd catch that anger and throw up joy. He would catch down that negativity and throw up positivity. He would catch all these different negative things that Carl was projecting on him. Even though Carl didn't start that way, he just ended up that way because life kept punching him. And he was sending up something different. Russell was just catching it and sending it up. Now, for me, I want to invite you a little bit into my life and the journey that I've been on since 2020, really hardcore. In 2020, I did not do anything in regards to junior wilderness scouting or anything of that nature, but I did start to learn a little bit more about my family. I started this journey where I started learning from my elders, from those who were older than me, from my relatives, from my great uncles, my grandparents, my great grandparents, just different things I started to learn and have these conversations. And when I was having these conversations, I was learning so much about myself. I was learning that some of the things I thought started with me did not start with me. Some of these things were passed down from one to another. I mean, I was on the phone with my great uncle and we started doing that belly laugh, that deep chuckle laugh, that huge laugh that kind of is really loud and obnoxious sometimes. And we laughed exactly the same, and we both stopped on the phone. I'm like, what just happened? And we just kept laughing. It was like, hold on, whoa, I see that. There were things that I was learning where I was like, where did this come from? Why do I do this? How do I do this? I thought it started with me, but started connecting dots, or reconnecting and connecting dots on things that seemed to pass down from people that I had no idea about. I saw pictures, was hearing shared experiences, I was crying, laughing, but then there was also another side to it, where I had conversations with certain relatives and elders in my family where they opened up a closet full of skeletons and they were sending down things that were negative, and they were sending down the pain that they never healed from. They were sending down the anger that they've experienced, anger that was older than I am, twice my age. They were sending down these things and I would catch it, and it was hard to send it back up. It was hard to send something back positive. I caught it, and it stuck with me. I caught it, and I couldn't send something back up just because of the things that were going on. It felt too heavy. It felt too burdensome, and it caused me in this journey in 2020 to think, what is this? What can I do here? Like, what is this? Maybe you felt that way before. Maybe you've grown up with your family and you've been connecting with them since a young age, and you've been connecting with your grandparents since a young age, and that's amazing. And a lot of you have done that. And some of us in this room may have felt a little disconnected from that. Maybe we don't know who our parents are. Maybe we don't know where we come from. Maybe we don't know some things, and it's a little harder to find and connect the dots that way. I can relate to that, and I'll touch more on it in a little bit. Or maybe that person was there, but they weren't present. And it was a little hard to connect in certain ways. It was harder to find out some things, and it kind of caused this tension in your life. That's something that I have experienced, but as I searched through scriptures, as I began to meditate, as I began to talk, as I began to seek out counsel from those who were older than me, there's this apparent word that kept coming up in my life. Now, this word isn't something that is like, oh, this is beautiful. Oh my goodness, it's life-changing. But I'm gonna show you and walk you through a process of how God has changed my life through this word, and have not changed my life, but also changed those around me. And it's this word called honor. You see, honor in our world today, it's a little counterculture. Because in today's world, it's centered around the self. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone directly. I'm speaking specifically of our culture. It's centered around the self. I mean, as soon as we're born, we're taught to think for ourselves. We're taught to think, what is our favorite color? What is the favorite thing we like? What do I want to do? What do I want? What do I want? And it's good to be self-aware, to know how you're processing, self-aware to know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and to what your heart is going through and what your mind is going through. It's good to be self-aware, but sometimes I think we've tiptoed along the lines of being self-centered more than being self-aware. Self-centered is where things around you, you're saying, I'm making it about me, versus being aware of what is going on in me or through me. We may have dived into this self-centeredness, and it's causing us to live in a false way, a way that actually, when we look at the Bible, it shows something differently. And when we look at these ancient traditions, it shows something differently. And I want to talk about this from the logical side and from the biblical side. From the logical side, the biological side. There's this man by the name of Mark Wallen. He is this sought-after neuropsychiatrist, and he came up with this groundbreaking research in regards to epigenetics. He wrote this book called It Didn't Start With You. And this is one of the quotes that he says in his book. He says that physical traits such as eyes, hair color, skin make up less than 2% of your DNA. Less than 2% of your DNA. The other 98% contributes to behavioral, emotional, and personality traits, memories, fears, addictions, and enjoyments that we inherit. So what we see when we look around this room is less than 2% of someone's DNA. The other 98%, which was categorized as junk DNA prior, is things that wire your mind, things that you dream of. The way you think, emotions, some of the stuff that we think starts with us and only belongs to us are actually things that have been passed down. It has been things that have passed down from one generation to the next. The very blood that flows through your veins didn't start with you, but it was passed down like a baton. So we can see here that things are passed down. Things are passed down. Nothing has started with us. No one in this room has just poofed in this room. Like voila. No, every single person in this room has came down through a set of people. Every single person who exists in this room has come down through a set of people. And then on the biblical side, we can see when we open up the Bibles, we'll see people that introduce themselves, Joshua, son of Nun from the tribe of Ephraim. Or maybe David, son of Jesse, from the tribe of Judah. Or if we were to say to modern times today, I would say, I'm Trevour, son of Dwayne, from the tribe of Athens Church, right? And this was important, though. These things were important. It was important because the name, the tribe, the parents' name showed that they were connected, that they were ingrained in a community. It showed that they had a backbone. It showed that they had a family unit. It showed that they had a family structure. But not only that, within the name, see how nations were built. In the early times, they would have tribes or small villages, and each tribe or small village had a certain job or occupation. So this tribe would be shepherds, this tribe would be blacksmiths, this tribe would be priests, and they would have these different tribes. So when I would say where I was from, someone would know, oh, okay, this is what he does. Okay, he has a family structure. And then I would say along the lines, the name, the tribe, and the father that I come from, they'll also show, oh, okay, he knows where he's from. But it also shows that I'm not estranged. It shows that I'm not alone. It shows that I'm not running away. It shows that I'm not disconnected from my family. And it shows these things. It shows who you were, shows what you do, and it also shows you what you believe. In their names, they often had gods attached to it that they believed in. So it showed what they believed. And I think it is no mistake in today's world, some of the three greatest questions we ask ourselves is, who am I? Who am I? What do I believe? What do I believe, and what am I to do? In college myself, I've changed my major multiple times so I can relate to that thing of what do I do? But those are three questions that are very prominent today that back in the day, because they were connected, helped and assisted them on how they were gonna live. But when we look at what God did, and we look and observe logically and see how he set it up, and we look at the Bible and see how they set it up, how they acknowledge those who come before us, we can see this, that God has created us through a process of others. God has created us through the process of others. None of us are here just from the wind. No, we came through a process of others, even Jesus. It says this in Colossians 1:15-16. It says this, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. This is the God we serve. This is the God we love. This is the God who is supreme over all, and we see that. The scriptures say that. But even him, when God sent him down to earth in incarnate form, he did it through a process of coming through others. We sing that song, we sing Christmas songs, Mary, did you know? And Mary's like, yes, I knew. I get it, I heard, I know it. She knew. He even came through the process. We see in Luke 3, the genealogy of Jesus. We see the genealogy of Jesus through the line of Mary. And in that, if you look at the names that are in there, you will see names that if you've read the Old Testament, you'll be like, oh, this person was bad. Oh, this person did crazy things. Oh, wow, this person has an ashamed story attached to them. Like when you look up and see the genealogy, it is not perfect people that is filled in that line. There's people that you wouldn't even want them to be a part of your story. We wouldn't want to be them today, but they were included in that story because honor is such an important thing. We see that on Mary's side. But if we look in Matthew 1, we see it on Joseph's side as well. And this is what is beautiful to me. In the scriptures, it talks about how Joseph was not Jesus' biological father. That we can read in the scriptures that Jesus was born through the process of being conceived by the Holy Spirit. And that Joseph himself wanted to leave Mary in a quiet way, in an honorable way, because he didn't want to shame her. He didn't want to bring out shame to her. So he said, I'm going to do this in an honorable and quiet way and leave. But an angel showed up to him and said to stay. He was not the biological father of Jesus. Yet in Matthew 1, what we see is the genealogy of Joseph when it comes to Jesus. we see names listed. Not only just Joseph's name, but even his parents and his grandparents and those who came before him contributed to the becoming of Jesus. What does that mean for you in this room today? That if you have a step parent, or you are a step parent, or maybe you're a father or a mother figure in this room, or maybe you're a coach or someone like a small group leader, someone who contributes to the becoming of someone else, your impartations on the next generation matters just as much. Your impartations in this room matters just as much. For me, it was my youth pastor. For me, it was my youth pastor. See, Jesus, what he did, he was a carpenter. Joseph was a carpenter. And Jesus did what Joseph did. Now, I'm not doing what my father did, but the person who took me under his wing was a youth pastor. The person who wasn't my biological father, but stepped into my life in the time that I needed him. He was my youth pastor, and I am doing the exact same thing that he's doing today. So you folks in the room, like me, who may have had other people contribute to your life that may not be a biological person, they still leave an imprint on you, and we can see that in scriptures. Now, why does all of this matter? Why does all of this matter? Because what comes up, what goes up, must come down. What goes up must come down. There are things that are passed down. Right? Some of us wake up in the morning and we look in the mirror and we're like, oh yeah, I look good. Yeah, I like my hair. Oh yeah, I like the muscles and all that. You look good. You like yourself. That's awesome. That's amazing. But there are things that are also passed down in the immaterial. There are things, 98% of things that are passed down that we cannot see, but we feel or others can sense and feel. And those things are passed down. And if we're honest with ourselves, we may love some of those things. But man, there are some things that we wish we can change. There are some things that we wish we can just, if we were able to put our hands on it and change it, we wish we could do it. We wish we could do it. We wish we can change it. And that's why honor matters so much, because if God used them to get to you, if God used them to create you, if God used them to get you here, how much value do they hold for you to get to him? How much value do they hold for you changing some things? How much value do they hold for you to create things, to turn one thing into the next thing? As the Israelites were leaving Egypt, God gave Moses 10 commandments. And in those 10 commandments, it's he named things like thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. Those things are like, okay, yeah, that's easy, that's easy. And then he gets to honor your father and mother, and he's like, wait a second. This is difficult, bro. This is hard. I don't know if I can do this. And God's like, all right, I'll add a blessing to that. It is the only commandment in the 10 commandments with a blessing. And it says this: honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God has given you. He attached a blessing to it. And I believe he attached a blessing to it because he knew how difficult it would be. He knew how difficult it would be. So the solution here, honor. To honor. Because when we read the scriptures, we see that when we send honor up, God sends blessings down. And I know Jesus, when we believe this, Jesus came to fulfill the law, and he achieved the law. And through him we receive all blessings. But in this time in the Old Testament, this was so prominent. Honor your father and mother. And he attached a blessing to it. When you go up and you send this, I will send this down. It's not something that you can search for or find in a self-help book. He says that the Lord your God will give to you. It is something that God will give to you. It's that peace that you're looking for. He will bring it to you. It is that joy that you're looking for. He will bring it to you. And it comes through the process that he's created through honoring. And as you honor up, God will send down the thing that he wants to give you that you cannot find in any corner of the earth. The peace, that joy, that serenity, that stillness. And he sends that down. Some of my favorite passages, and this is my mom's favorite passage, but some of my favorite passages on where we can read honor is in this part in the Bible. It's in the Gospel of John, and Jesus is at this wedding, and his family is there, his friends are there, his disciples are there. It was actually a wedding of a relative, and his mom's walking around noticing, just checking that things out, making sure they're cool. And she goes over to the wine, and she's like, it's getting a little low. It's getting a little low. I know somebody who can fix this. She looks over at Jesus, and Jesus just kind of twiddling his thumbs, chilling like, hey, what's going on? His mom comes up to him and says, hey, can you fix this problem? What problem, Mom? See, the wine's getting a little low. I was wondering if you could do one of those things. He's like, what? Right. So the next word that comes out of his mouth is woman, right? Woman. Woman. And this is why this is my mom's favorite story. So back when I was 12, I read this story. And I was like, oh, you can say that to your mom? Like, you could, just in the middle of an altercation, you could just throw out, woman? Like, you know what? I was in the mirror practicing it like, woman, I'm like, I'm hyping myself up, getting ready to say it. And my mom, in the altercation, she's like, I had the bracelet on, what would Jesus do? He would say woman. So I'm in the altercation, and she says, so, woman? And that's the end of the story. I don't remember what happened after that. Woke up the next morning, went to school like it was normal. People like, yo, what's wrong with your face? I'm like, nothing, looking good. So Jesus goes, woman, and it was a different context back then, but Mom, listen, why are you involving me? That's not our problem. Jesus replied, my time has not yet come. But his mother's done talking to him at this point. His mom takes a step back and says, okay, well, let's see how this goes. And she tells the servants, do whatever he says. Now, Jesus wasn't lying when he said, my time has not yet come. Jesus wasn't lying when he said, my time has not yet come, but he chose to honor his mother, and he did that miracle. He said, fill these jars up with water. And in that water, go give it to people. And what will happen is a miracle. The water turned into wine. Now listen, when I say this was the first miracle that Jesus performed in public. And he only did it because he was honoring his mother. He was not lying when he said his time has not yet come, but because he chose to honor his mother, a miracle happened. Hear me. He chose to honor his mother, and a miracle happened. Because Jesus honored his mother, he created a miracle for others. He created a miracle for others by honoring his mother. He honored his mother. He sent something up, and what came down was something that changed the course of the wedding. The person who was hosting the wedding said, we've never seen or tasted wine like this. Listen, people never tasted the water. People never tasted the water. They only tasted the wine, and it was through the process of him honoring why they only tasted the wine in the first place. There are things that will come in your life. There are things that have happened in your life. There are things that are going on in your life that through the process of honoring, you can turn whatever is happening, whatever's been passed down, whatever is going on, you can change that thing, water into wine. You can change that thing, that altercation that is going on. You can change that trait that is being passed down, that 98% or whatever you have it, that is coming down. The way we change it, and God has showed us it and told us it, is through the process of honor. And in this story, we can see how to honor through Jesus. One, honor the process. Jesus clearly honored the process. He is the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. He is the God. He can easily said, I knew you before you were born. He could have had this entitlement. He could have placed something on his head and said, you know what, this is who I am. Established his throne right there in the center of the wedding, but instead he came humbly and honored the process that his God had created, his Father had created. He honored the process, how God chose to continue existence. God set something and said, this is how this is how existence is going to continue. And Jesus honored it by honoring his mother. The second thing is this, and this one's a little difficult, is to honor the person. Now, as I say this humbly as someone who is walking through this. This is difficult Because although God may have chosen your parents, he may have chosen the people that were going to have us, he didn't choose the sin that they were going to have. He didn't choose the problem. He didn't choose the addiction. He didn't choose the things that were going to set them back that they were going to have. He didn't choose that. It says in James that God doesn't tempt anyone or causes anyone to sin, but we're lured away by our evil desires that entice us. It is something that is within. And if we're honest with ourselves and look at them, and maybe if we learn like what I learned, some of the problems that came to me, I thought it may have started with my dad, but I learned it was something that happened to my dad. It was something that came to him, and it kept going up. So when we go through this, God didn't choose the sin our parents were going to have. That's something that happened. You know, when we think of ourselves and we think of our parents, we would like to say, you know, if I had perfect parents, this would be the outlook. But the truth of the matter is, once upon a time, there were perfect parents. There were perfect people who walked with God. Adam and Eve, they walked with God. They loved God. They had harmony with God. They were able to step into space with him and step into a reality and a realm with him where he fully existed and they existed with him. These perfect people made by the hands of God, yet they even made imperfect decisions. They even made imperfect decisions. So when you honor your parents, when you look at them, it is choosing to see God when you look at your parents. It is saying, when I see my parents, I will choose to see the hands of God crafting them despite their mistakes. And these are some ways that we can honor our parents. These are some ways that we can honor those who come before us. And this is something I'm walking through and living out myself as one. Honor with your actions. Honor with your actions. What are some honorable things I can do? It is not a one-size-fit-all thing, so I'm not going to tell you how you should do it, because some people in this room, you may honor with your actions and it looks differently from the next. But honor with your actions. The next thing is honor with your words. What comes out of your mouth? What are you saying around them? What are you saying when they're not around? And the third thing is to honor with your thoughts. This was a struggle for me. Personally, if I can be honest and vulnerable, as a pastor, this was a struggle for me, because it's easy to say, all right, I know what to do. And it's easy to say, all right, I know what to say. But when it came to my thought life and what was actually going on inside of me, man, I was like, God, you got to do a miracle. You got to work on changing this thing into another thing. You can change water into wine. I need you to do a miracle here. And the more I kept walking in this honoring process, the more I came running against these difficulties, God seemed to be changing things in my life to where I was able to see God, where I was able to see his process, where I was able to see his hands in it, not only on my elders, but also in me. I was able to see God within myself. I was able to see God in a situation. I know things won't always be perfect, and I don't have the expectation of when I honor, things are always going to be perfect. But what I do have an idea and a sense is when I begin to honor, that God sends down the blessings, that when I honor up, God does fulfill his word. He is true to his word. He is a good God. And that sense of peace, that sense of serenity, I didn't feel the need to fix something, because honoring isn't fixing. Honoring is an action that you live and do and apply, regardless, because it's a commandment, not based on how you feel, but a commandment based on his word. So to honor the person. And the third thing is this, is to honor your process. To honor your process. What we just saw was a man, Carl, who was holding on to some things. And there was this kid, Russell, that he didn't really want to be with him in the beginning. But we see something change and shift in his life to where his focus, his heart, and his love is shown that he wants this kid to survive, that he wanted this kid to be alive. He wanted to give this kid a life to continue to live. But in order for him to do that, he had to let go of something. And he had to let go of that thing. You know, I was talking to a good friend the other day, and he goes, Trevor, we often have heroes and villains in our life. And we put some on a pedestal, and there's some that we'll look at and say, you know what, these are terrible people. These people have done terrible things. And we look at other people and say they've done great things and whatnot. But what honoring does is it takes those heroes and it takes those villains and it makes them human. And in order to honor your process as well, when you honor your process, the journey that you're walking, you're choosing to make yourself human as well. That there will be times where you will make mistakes. That there will be times where you bump into things. That there will be times where you fall into ditches. But when you know to understand and honor your process, you know that sometimes you just have to let some things go. You just have to let some things go. Because when we honor, when we choose to honor, we're sending things up and God is sending things down, and we're able to turn water into wine. We'll be seeing things change from one thing to another. I'm telling you guys, I'm seeing this in my very own life. My children, my 4 kids that you just saw, have never heard my father's voice up until about 3 weeks ago. They didn't even know he existed. At their age, I was angry at my father. At their age, I thought the worst of my father. But when my children heard his voice, they lit up like a Christmas tree, and so did my dad. So did my dad, so much that he wants to be more involved and has been taking steps all through the process since 2020 of honoring him. It's been a long road. Personally, it's been a long road. Missed weddings, missed graduations, missed ceremonies, missed awards, missed all kinds of things. Football games, basketball games, absent. But what is happening now is a change that I'm witnessing that my children will not have to taste. When I was their age, I tasted something. And at their age that I was at, they're tasting something differently. And we're seeing the difference, and I'm seeing the difference because of the way that I'm choosing to honor and love with not only my thoughts, but also with my actions and my words. And my children are experiencing and tasting something else. I'm changing one thing in my family, and you get to do that as well through the process of honoring. You get to say, all right, this is probably what's being sent down, but you know what? I'm gonna send this up because I know that God's gonna send something greater. You have the opportunity to change the course of what gets passed down through honoring up. See what God will do. See what God will do in your family. See what God will do in your household. See what God will do with your relatives. See what God will do with those who come after you when you're changing water into wine. And I'm sure they won't even know that they're tasting the best because God will provide it. I'm seeing it in my own life, and I pray that you'll see it in yours. Let's pray. God, thank you so much that you love us, that you've sent your son for us. I thank you so much that you've created this process of honoring, God. I hope that we may be able to see you in all of it, Lord. I pray for everyone here, God, that they will continue to walk in the ways that you've set before them. And I pray, Lord, that as they send honor up, I ask for multiple blessings to come down in this room on their lives, God. May you fulfill your words and may you fulfill your promise. In your son's name we pray. Amen and amen.